years, the story in Vancouver was always the same. We don't have enough room. People were flooding in, and the primary concern for everyone, from the government to your next door neighbor, was how to build fast enough to house all of them. But as we sit here in 2026, the data is telling us a completely different story. For the first time in modern history, we aren't just seeing a slowdown, we are seeing the numbers actually flip. In 2025, according to Statistics Canada, British Columbia's population dropped by over 41,000 people. To put that into perspective, the last time BC saw an annual population decline was 1874. That's 151 years ago, and at that time, it was only 2,000 people. This is not a slowdown, this is a reversal. And it's not just in BC. Nationally, Canada lost over 102,000 people in 2025, the largest annual population decrease ever recorded in this country's history. Zooming in on the national picture, Canada's population contracted by roughly 76,068 people in the third quarter of 2025 alone. So if you're an owner, a renter, or an investor in Vancouver, this data affects you directly. Today, we're going to look at exactly what happened, who is leaving, where are they going, and why this investor-friendly condo market is facing its toughest year and test yet, and what it means for your real estate decisions right now. We've got a lot to cover, so let's dive in. Before we begin, if you're new to this channel, I'm Javita Pinto, your realtor, friend, and educator. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would love to also hear your thoughts, so please make sure to leave a comment below. I always enjoy hearing your perspective. Let me start by cutting through the chatter because there is a lot of it. The headline you keep seeing is "Everybody's leaving for Alberta." Well, this is not entirely wrong, but it's also not the real story either. I'd like to begin with a win. So here is what Statistics Canada is actually showing us. When it comes to interprovincial migration, people physically moving between provinces, BC had actually seen net gains in 2025. About 3,175 more people moved to BC from other parts of Canada. So, if Canadians aren't fleeing in droves, why is this population shrinking? The population collapse is almost entirely driven by one thing: federal migration policy. The government made a deliberate decision to reduce Canada's non-permanent resident population. International students and temporary workers down to 5% of the national total by the end of 2026. In BC alone, that meant a massive outflow of temporary residents throughout 2025. Tens of thousands of people who were here filling rentals, buying groceries, contributing to the economy, and then they were just gone. By comparison, let's look at Ontario because this is worth pausing on. Ontario lost 119,070 people in 2025, a 0.7% annual decline, identical to BC's rate. But here is the thing about Ontario. Their interprovincial migration laws, people choosing to leave for other provinces, actually improved in 2025 compared to the year before. So even in Ontario, the mass migration story is overstated. The non-permanent resident departure is the engine driving both provinces into negative territory. It's almost entirely down to the federal policy of non-permanent residents, NPRs. The government set a hard target to bring the NPR population down to 5% by the end of 2027. In BC alone, we saw a net outflow of over 80,000 temporary residents, students, and work permit holders last year. This isn't a guess or a feeling. It's a policy-driven correction. And while BC and Ontario were shrinking, Alberta grew by nearly 60,000 people in 2025. That is the actual picture. A lot of people are moving indeed, but not everyone is moving to Alberta. But the federal government removed a very large, very concentrated tenant class for the market, and the consequences are real. This shift hits the rental market first, and it hits hard. These 80,000 temporary residents who left BC, well, they weren't buying $2.5 million detached homes in Dunbar. They were renters overwhelmingly. When you remove that many bodies from the rental pool, well, demand doesn't feel like a gentle decline. It feels like a right now. Metro Vancouver's rental vacancy rate has climbed to 3.7%, the highest level since 1988. Compare that to 2022 and 2023 when the vacancy rate was under 1%. Back then, landlords could pick and choose between applicants. Multiple applications for a single standard unit was normal. A sub 1% vacancy rate means options are extremely limited, almost non-existent. Today, for rent signs are staying up for weeks. Landlords are offering incentives, 1 month free rent, signing bonuses, including additions, such as a locker that you would normally pay for separately, flexible move-in terms. The market is a market that is flipped on its head. The mismatch is wild. While the population is shrinking, we actually completed a record number of new purpose-built rental units last year, nearly 11,000 in Greater Vancouver alone. We are building more supply at precisely the moment that the customer base is being cut by the federal policy. This is why asking rents across BC have dropped nearly 8.5% over the last 2 years. Now, there are two nuances worth mentioning for anyone who owns a condo that they rent out. New development has come to a halt, and 3.7 vacancy rate applies to purpose-built rental buildings. The condo rental market is sitting at around 1.5% vacancy, so it's tighter, but it's also softening. Either way, the direction is the same. More supply, less demand, falling rents. If you're an owner or a real estate investor in Vancouver, this is the part you need to pay attention to. The standard Vancouver investor play for the last 10 years have looked like this. Buy a pre-sale condo, wait for it to complete, collect on the rents, rely on the sub 3% and steady annual rate increases to make the numbers work. Well, that model is broken. Right now, investors are facing what I call a triple threat. So 1, lower rents. You are earning less monthly income than you underwrote when you bought it. Rents are not flat. They are actively declining in Vancouver submarkets. Number 2, higher vacancy. Your unit might sit empty for a month or two between tenants. At Vancouver prices, 1 month empty is an expensive month. Number 3, the mortgage renewal cliff. According to the Bank of Canada, roughly 60% of outstanding Canadian mortgages are renewing by the end of 2026. Of those, about 40% of all of those mortgage holders are expected to face higher payments than what they were locked into years ago. So if you're an investor moving from a 2% rate to a 5 or 6% rate and your rent is actually dropping, the cash flow isn't just tight, it's negative. This is why the condo market is the weakest segment right now. In downtown Vancouver, investor-heavy products are sitting on the market. Buyers are looking at the rental data and saying, well, no thanks. And here is the data point that tells you how deep this really goes. In February 2026, pre-sale home launches across Metro Vancouver totaled to just 64 units. That is a 6% historical monthly norms. Developers are not launching because the investor demand is not there. When you compare where we are now to where we were just even a year ago, the biggest difference is the selectivity. I want to be precise here because nuances matter. This is not a crash across the board. Single-family homes in established neighborhoods such as East Vancouver, Kitsilano, Dunbar, South Granville are actually holding their value relatively well. Why? Because those are not investor products. Those are for the end user. Families still want homes. There is still a genuine and significant shortage of ground-oriented housing. The fundamentals there are actually different. The real pain is concentrated in what I call investor-grade density. The 450 square foot studio in a generic high-rise, the pre-sale condo that's sold as an income property. Ontario is in the same position, arguably worse. Ontario lost 119,000 residents in a single year. Toronto was more inventory heavy than it had been in years. People are leaving Toronto for the East Coast or the prairies because the math for living there just doesn't work anymore. The economic gravity is brutal. Vancouver is stickier. We have the coast, the climate, the lifestyle. People absorb a lot more here, but the economic gravity eventually catches up with the lifestyle premium. We are definitely feeling that burn too. There's no way around that. So, is this the end of the Vancouver real estate market? And what does this actually mean for the decisions that you need to make right now? Okay, well, of course not. But the end of the dumb money era is definitely over. You can't just buy a door and assume you'll get rich. This is why the threefold distinct scenario, if you're a buyer, unless you've not been paying attention to Vancouver's real estate, you know that you've got good leverage. Inventory is up. Sellers are negotiating the price and doing the work after that is necessary for repairs in order to get their home sold. You're not competing against 17 other offers. That does not mean buy anything. It means the right property properly negotiated is genuinely a dream that is existing in the market that we have right now. If the past is any indicator, I don't foresee that this window is gonna, stay open for a long period of time. If you are a seller, the truth is your outcome depends entirely on what you are selling. Ground-oriented, detached, established neighborhoods, well, the market is there. A studio or a one-bedroom in a generic original tower, you need to have really sharp pricing. Overpriced listings in markets are not just sitting and eventually selling. They are sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting. If you're an investor, the government has started a plan. Keep the non-permanent resident levels suppressed throughout 2026 and potentially beyond. The rental pressure is not resolving in the next quarter. Conservative projections means assuming the vacancy rate will be flat or even slightly more of a decline. If the deal only works with a 3% annual population growth every year, that is not a deal. That is a gamble. The era of disciplined, well-calculated decisions is here. And frankly, that's not a bad thing. I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. It means the people who do the work, who read the data, who make informed decisions, they are really going to come out ahead. The data is clear. The population boom has paused. Federal policy is now the single biggest driver of Vancouver property values. And the playbook that worked for the last decade, it's being rewritten in real time. Whether you're looking to exit the market, you're thinking about stepping out into the market, or looking to find the right opportunity in Greater Vancouver and the Lower Mainland this year, well, this is where strategy matters. If you'd like guidance rooted in experience, data, and real-time insights, you can scan the QR code and book a purposeful strategy call with me. I'm Javita Pinto. If you found this helpful, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.